On Independence Day, Israeli Independence Day. Talk about what is that? What's the significance?
Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and Steve Lefkowitz. What do you have today?
Nachman, maybe you could explain to me what is the importance or relevance of Yom HaShoah? I mean, I know it has something to do with the Holocaust, but the Holocaust is something which happened over 50 years ago. And why should we be concerned about the Holocaust? And what relevance does it have, to people today, and also for future generations? Why this continuous, remorse and reminding people of the Holocaust?
Well, the Holocaust, of course, was a tragedy of tremendous proportions, astronomical proportions. 6 million Jews, a third of the Jewish people, were destroyed. Truth to tell, the Holocaust idea of education did come on for many years. Of course, the Holocaust stopped with World War II, as we should all know the date, 1945. On the other hand, you'll not see literature or the popularization. Now we're, of course, in the 1990s, so maybe people will forget about maybe when they were 20, 30 years ago. You hardly saw anything. It just started coming on where the movie Shoah before, I don't know exactly years, people remember that. 6, 7 years ago, the TV serial miniseries was Holocaust. Now, of course, you surely have the
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List, obviously a major film. So these you have to keep in perspective, are only fairly modern. I mean, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years back. Now, look, you just said it's 50 years ago since the Holocaust. It's a very interesting phenomena. The Holocaust survivors, which I don't know why it should be on their heads to make everybody remember. It should have been the Jewish community. But the Jewish community almost shied away from it, and people don't know the reason why. Maybe they were ashamed of it, of maybe doing nothing, and they just didn't know what to do with it. And even the Holocaust survivors say, people just said, just be quiet and carry on with life. You came to America, you came to Israel, all right, get to work, make your life into something. And it was after about 20, 30 years when these Holocaust survivors, it seems, God, maybe some were financially well off, and they just said, hey, something bad happened to us. I mean, again, one psychologist once told me a person wants to forget about his, the bad experiences. I mean, just it's a natural, way of people deal with troubles. They also just want to hide it, put it away from them. They don't want to just delve into it. Elie Wiesel was one of the first, not saying only the first. You'll see literature, let's call it popular work that it took off, because there were books, and I have seen books in the 40s about that. Popular book, Elie Wiesel, with his book Night, was one of the first in the list, and that was in the early 60s, I think, if I remember correctly. I mean, you're talking about 15 years later, after an event that they finally started, talking about it, dealing with it. So Elie Wiesel probably is the premier #1 person who, of course, he is a Holocaust survivor, and he just obviously got the Nobel Prize, so he's #1 on the list of, I hate to use the word popularizing, but making it familiar, maybe that would be a best word, to the public. And it would really be important for the Jewish people as a whole. See, this is I come from a perspective where every Jewish person should be educated totally in Judaism. And what does that mean? We talk about many times that anti-Semitism is nothing new. When we say at the Passover Haggadah, if you remember, every single day, every single generation, there is anti-Semites. If there's the Pharaoh in Egypt that tried to destroy the Jews, which is, of course, the Passover story, or it was the Greeks at the Hanukkah story, or it was the Romans that destroyed the temple in the Second Temple. I mean, with just the major events I'm going through. Haman, the Purim story, was in Persia. I mean, it goes on, and just like the Haggadah says, it was every generation. Previous years, it was Stalinistic Russia who tried to destroy the Jews. Hitler, of course. Maybe people say the Arabs today, that they've tried to, a lot of Arabs are talking, let's destroy Israel, push them back into the sea. These are modern-day anti-Semites that don't like the Jewish people too much, to say the least. And once you know that, you know good Jewish history, and I'm not saying you have to have a PhD in it, but just a solid grounding in Jewish history, which anybody who goes to a solid G'day school or yeshiva does know, then the Holocaust, in a way, and I'm not minimizing it in any sense, puts it in perspective, meaning there's anti-Semites. Pharaoh tried to kill all Jewish people. Haman and Purim tried to kill all Jews, and Hitler tried to kill all the Jews. Another unfortunate scene on the on the Jewish history. Not
So try to put on the same level. So we have something for Hanukkah, we have something for Pesach, so something for what happened during World War II, the Shoah experience.
right. So what happens is that unfortunately today many Jewish people are unaware of Judaism. And with the Holocaust people had a different perspective that I understand it should be part of Jewish history. I guess that's my point. You learn about Jewish history. This is another major issue. I mean, major is not minor, but it is a major issue in Jewish history.
But why is it something that doesn't seem to have been publicized or gained the amount of recognition versus the other Jewish holidays? In terms of, not observance, but what ritualism is attached to it, or people going to synagogue or going to community centers to hear what speakers, or to see films, or attend various discussions concerning the Holocaust?
It's a difficult question. I don't know why. I mean, there's two people doing that. That's what I'm saying. You could ask for the rabbis and they're leaders of Judaism. Why haven't they done anything? There was the Holocaust Memorial Day, which was put after Passover, which so many days that you can commemorate in the Holocaust. They picked the uprising of the worst, the ghetto, because they felt it wasn't only the persecution of Jews, but the uprising, so to speak, the Jewish people trying to get an uprising. And obviously the Warsaw Ghetto uprising was lost, but they did hold off. It was a very veiled story. People who know about it, maybe we should have someone, I don't know how many people in
But the Warsaw
District.
Uprising?
Yeah, there are people who've come through. I don't know, I never know.
I mean, I had heard that one of the reasons why specifically, and maybe it seems like the Orthodox day schools or the religious day schools don't play a great emphasis on it when we talk about Yom HaShoah, which is in April, but rather they consider as if a day of mourning is really Tisha B'Av?
Yeah,
and
the
they feel the 9th of Av. So they feel that's the appropriate time to discuss or really have those moments of concern and despair, or to commemorate the various tragic events that have occurred throughout Jewish history. And I'm wondering if that could be a possibility.
It's for sure. See, it was taken over by the Holocaust people, which were, you say April, for example. Now, April is the Hebrew month of Nisan, which is the month of Passover, which is a happy month.
Right.
So that's why it's a little bit of a friction. The people who made the Holocaust Remembrance Day didn't have the Torah perspective in mind. They had their own Jewish, the Holocaust perspective, but it wasn't the Torah, like you said, and for good reasons. There are mourning days of mourning in the Jewish calendar. They could have probably instituted in that, but the Holocaust survivors decided to do what they wanted to do, and therefore it's always a little bit of a friction. There's not in that sense. I mean, that's what I'm saying, in the schools, but not saying that yeshivas don't commemorate the Holocaust or learn about it. On the contrary, they probably learn about it more than any other Jewish students anywhere else. But that's what I'm saying. It didn't take off as a major mourning period because maybe it should have been done, like you say, in the natural days.
But you think, in a way, that faces is a concern, the fact that it hasn't taken off? Because here, like you said, just nearly 50 years ago, a third of the Jewish population was decimated. Shouldn't we learn from history? And how are future generations going to react towards the Holocaust? And couldn't, by the lack of involvement or lack of understanding as to what occurred, can't the Holocaust in a way occur again?
It's an excellent question, which was intrigued me also. Now I went to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. twice already.
I've been there once. Yeah.
Now, and again, and I know we have a non-Jewish audience, and there's many non-Jewish people who think it's just a Jewish museum. It's the Holocaust Museum. It's on federal land, but it was built with Jewish money. But many non-Jewish people go see it, and I do recommend, if anybody, surely if they're going to Washington D.C. and see the other tourist attractions, they should stop by the Holocaust Museum. But it's interesting. I did see many non-Jewish, there's school groups going in from around the area. There's Virginia and Maryland, of course, not too far away, and they take the students there. Now, I was intrigued when I was visiting. I says, I wonder what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, what effect, like you're just asking, are they going to learn the lesson, that don't do the thing. The Holocaust Museum is set up, it seems like they're saying, see where hatred can lead. You just say, I can't stand them, but you let it go unbridled hatred, people ultimately end up in ovens. They just have so much hatred. You have to have more tolerance for other people. It seems that's the point that the Holocaust Museum wants to convey to these people. But then, I said these views to other people, to other people, I wonder what they're thinking. And someone showed me a New York Times article where I guess it was a natural enough question which intrigued this reporter. And he made a survey of many people going out. And I don't know if they got the point. From this article, some said, it was like a horror movie. You go to a horror movie, people don't come depressed. Oh, that's neat. Did you see how people were shot up? And, they come out from these cops and crimes movies and, people are dead. What are you, craziness? And some are true stories. World War II stories, war stories. People are dead. And you ask people, are you depressed because you saw people killed? It's oh, that was neat. Did you see got blown up? And, and just the way people react. So when they went to the Holocaust Museum, it was almost like that. It was neat, like saw how people were dead, and stuff like that. So I think people are missing the point. I hope they don't, and I hope it never comes to a test where, let's say, are they going to follow a mad leader? Hopefully it never would have to come to that situation. So I guess maybe we'll never know really. But it's a difficult issue. I know that's what the Holocaust survivors, they want to memorialize themselves. Mm-hmm. And their experiences. The worst thing that happens when there's a few Mishigoyim, you say in Yiddish, crazy nuts, that say the Holocaust never happened. I mean, you have to say they're Mishigoyim, they're nuts. But, there's sometimes, a big enough lie, like Hitler himself did, people start believing it. So that enrages these people. And they want to just document as much as they can that, that obviously it did happen.
How could we... I understand, let's say, if we take our children or we take our relatives or our friends or even ourselves to go down to the Holocaust Museum, and by seeing as to what has occurred to prevent what could occur for the future. But let's suppose we don't have the opportunity to go down there. What as we as individuals or we as Jews should do or try to do here locally or with our neighbors or friends or within our own family to convey that Holocaust experience, so this way we become more sensitized and become humanized towards other individuals?
Well, there's two parts there. One, I think that people should just learn about it, and we do have speakers. We once had ones, we'll have more for our Jewish View, because there really is a big project now of taping Holocaust survivors' testimony, and we have the means to publicize, and I think we should do that also. And there are in the Capital District survivors of Holocaust. And it's interesting learning from their experiences, and people go through tragedies. I think in America, and I think it was in World War II also, people are so comfortable, they forget that there are people starving, people at war, and the tragedies that they're perpetuated by very evil people, and that are happening today. So it's a hard route, it's a hard route. People, if you say you care about people starving in Africa or there's wars, and unfortunately there's a lot of different corners of the world and terrorist bombs, and you can pick out a lot of different places where people are suffering, to say the least, in this world. I don't know, it's a hard thing. You can talk to people, you can sensitize them. Few people will act. I mean, you can always ask Israelis. And they lost a little bit of land because of that. And the Jews even got into Jerusalem, halfway into Jerusalem. Again, every time the Arabs went to war, it came back into their face. Because they lost more land.
So what do we do? As part of Israeli Independence Day, we just, have parades?
Well, it's we. I mean, it depends who the we is. I mean, it's really not so much. It's Israeli statehood. They take a day off. It's actually interesting. The Day of Remembrances of Holocaust is very eerie. The day before is Remember the Holocaust. So everybody is solemn, and then they blow their horns or the sirens, and it becomes a festive mood. So it goes from almost a depressed feeling, a sad period, to a very joyous feeling. Yeah, and they have their parades there, of course. Almost like, I don't know exactly July 4th, to say the least, but same idea, same gist over here. In America, there's parades, in New York, where your major Jewish population is, of course. paraded.
Is there anything special here in the Capital District that you know of? Or?
They always have some commemoration, both or something like that. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Maybe I see a little flaw in your character, or maybe I can't find any. I know, Steve, it's hard to find it there, but yeah, whatever. You know,
Ask my mother.
No, yeah, and then, but you know, a good friend helps each other out. You don't have to be what you say in Yiddish, a stuck. You don't have to be a stick like ha.